Hi, you're listening to the Rosenfeld Review. I'm Lou Rosenfeld, your host. I am thrilled to have two old friends with me today, Lada Gorlenko and Kit Unger, who are two main folks curating this year's Design at Scale conference, which is coming up. It's going to be virtual, June 8th through 10th. And we wanted to do a very quick podcast and get it out right now because we're just opening up the call for presentation proposals, our CFP. And these are the folks that are going to be reviewing the proposals that you might want to submit. And we want you to hear a little bit about this conference and about what types of things Kit and Lada are looking for. And I think you're going to find the theme this year pretty interesting. So let me first briefly introduce Kit and Lada. Kit is Senior VP of Design at Mural, and Lada is the Senior Director of Research at Mural. I've known them certainly longer than they've been at Mural. It seems like, half the really smart people I know are heading to Mural these days, so it's not surprising. But I've been working with Lada on this conference, I think, since Lada, 2017?
15, yeah, 17.
Well, you were a speaker in 2015 and 2016. And Kit for at least a couple of years now, right? And I think you've been certainly connected to the event in different ways all along. So you two, what do you have in mind for Design at Scale, which, by the way, folks may remember in the past having a different name, Enterprise Experience, and before that, Enterprise UX. So what's going to be a little different as we put together the program this year?
I think this year, last year we renamed the conference and started calling it Design at Scale. And I think this year's theme is very apt and very fitting the new name at scale. What we have in mind for this year is we call the conference Shift Happens. And
wait. How do you, did you just say what I thought you said?
I used to work at Smartsheet.
SHIFT.
Oh, there's an F in there. It's an F word. Okay, got it.
It's an F word. We used to work at Smartsheet, which also happened. So there's lots of things happening. Now, this particular year, we thought that what we would like to share and what we would like to learn from our audiences is unprecedented change at scale of the last couple of years, where so many things went so differently. And the overarching theme of this year's conference is that change at scale. And what have we learned in the last 2 years that will allow us not to go back to normal, but go forward to normal.
So would it be fair to say that you're looking at this point as like a moment, a pivot point to just sort of like take stock of this last 2 years, which has been like obviously horrible in so many ways, but there's been some interesting things happening. There's been acceleration of things that were already going to happen or already underway. Mm-hmm. Taking stock of those things and maybe sort of putting them together in a way that we can all use in the years ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and you're talking about acceleration of work, right? So in 2020, the pandemic accelerated the future of work and collaboration, and it certainly accelerated Mural's growth, right? So when I joined Mural just a little over a year ago, the design team was around 10 people, and we're now over 70 people. I mean, that's hyper growth to the extreme, right? And then, but one of the questions that's in the call for proposals is, what have you learned in the last 2 years that changed how you face the future? And prior to the pandemic, I was one of those people that felt like everyone on the team had to be co-located for the most part, right? And but once the pandemic happened, we were all forced to work remotely. I saw many benefits. The pandemic sucks. Period, no doubt about it. But there's been positive outcomes in how we work because of being forced to work remotely, and so that's one of the things we might be looking for. what are the positive outcomes, and what have you learned, and how can people work better?
So so definitely getting people's lessons, stories, even case studies on how remote work has changed, how we work. Does that pertain as well to things like how we design teams, how we hire for hybrid teams, how we keep them, what the care and feeding is of our people, things along those lines?
Absolutely. I think it's going to affect, and it has affected a lot, everything from hiring and onboarding. Both of us, especially me when I joined Mural, there wasn't a research team. So the team I've been hiring in the last year, they're all brand new people, and I've never met them in person. So how do we do that? That also different processes is how we work, because different team composition, different team dynamic, different team structure ultimately lead to different processes. And we're starting to explore because, say, for example, in the last couple of years, a lot of people feel depressed and worried and anxiety. What can we do to change the way we work, not just work from home, but for example, what can we do to change the team dynamic, team composition, how people work? We're exploring partnering designers so that they can work multiple people on the same problem rather than each of them having their own area of ownership, right? So similar in research, how do we talk to our customers? How do we observe our customers that we're no longer can go on field trips, and so on and so forth? And I think why now the question, why this year, not last year, and not next year, because I think the 2-year mark is a really good time for us where we're no longer in the middle of the new things, new pandemic, new way of working, and we can reflect on what's happened. Yet we're still on the tail of it. So we're not too remote from things happening. And that's why this year, I think it's a perfect right time to talk about that. And I want to encourage everyone who is listening and considering submitting. We are not looking for success stories only. That's the main thing. No gloss. If you've tried something that didn't work, please submit. Please talk about it. We want it to be an honest, authentic conversations about things that didn't work as much as things that worked. And sometimes, based on the conference last year and feedback we got, the presentations that highlighted things that didn't work, so failed attempts, were some of the most successful talks we had. Kit,
So,
what do you think?
So failures,
100%.
yeah, failures that lead to lessons. And I mean, I think it would be really hard for anyone to claim they haven't been learning from failures these last few years. Okay, so the two of you are really looking at this, or so far talking from your perspectives as people who run an organization, pretty substantial organization, certainly one that's growing quickly. There's a lot of great lessons from there. Mm-hmm. But I also wonder if you are seeing in your work independent contributors, people who are actually doing design and research in the trenches, are they also coming up with some of these hard fought for lessons? And are those lessons welcome on this program?
Definitely, absolutely. Right. And both sides of the problem, right? Thinking about, Lada's point about things that we're trying that, don't work, and things that we're trying that do work. Right. So there's so many issues, right? Like working remotely, there's time zone issues have been a problem. But, one of the things to think about, like success stories, we're coming up with ways to make that work better. So for example, we adjust our schedules, we use Loom, we're getting better at asynchronous ways of working when we can. So hearing other success stories like that would be awesome. But then, Lada was talking about kind of the loneliness issue, and it's a real problem for some people. We can't bond over lunch the way we used to before the pandemic. I can't hug someone when they need a hug, right? And I can't get a hug when I need one. This is sad, but I'm just thinking about this. My sister passed away right before the pandemic started, and the hugs from people at work really helped,
Mm-hmm.
So when I see people suffering on my team, it's rough. And so, hearing stories about like, how do you deal with that? How do you create that human connection?
Well, go ahead, Lada.
I think that you use the word leaders describing us, and I think that now and in the last 2 years, more and more leaders are people who listen more and talk less. I get a lot of cues from my team, right? And we've done lots of experiments in my previous team at Smartsheet and my new team at Mural on how we work, different process, different tries. Most of the cues I get from my team is, what do they think will work for them? How do they think we should do? And I think especially now that we're remote, so many ICs feel invisible.
Mm-hmm.
And listening to them first and tapping into their wisdom. And I think us as leaders our job is to mix those ingredients, to find them, right? To put them together, to harvest that wisdom and try, experiment, and support. Is more than ever, this is our job as leaders, not to come up with something, but to get the cues and clues from our teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Lada, is someone who's specifically, working with researchers and is a researcher. Are you finding that the act of doing research has been radically affected? There are a lot of lessons that are coming out of there that will continue on once we do go back in person.
Not the act of doing research, because I've been testing remotely and using remote participants for a long time. But what research is, we are redefining what research is. And at Mural, we're going away from having a traditional research practice where researchers do research to having a research coaching practice where we will end up with a number of research coaches or research advisors who are professional researchers, but they don't necessarily do research. They support designers and PMs and engineers in teaching, training, coaching, and supporting them to do research. And part of that is also that all remote new way of working, because we increasingly feel isolated every day. So if engineers write code, designers design, researchers research, we're adding to silos. By flipping the research practice to research coaching practice, we are bringing people together in one place, in one virtual room, saying, guys, you do it. Okay, we are here to support you. I talked to one of my design directors this morning, and we came up with a metaphor of the fresh egg metaphor kind of things. Remember when in the 60s, the baking mixes became a thing, and housewives started using baking mix instead of baking from scratch? So every cake mixture requires you to add an egg. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they did focus groups, they did research back then, and they discovered that if housewives only add water, psychologically they are not baking. But if they crack an egg and add a fresh egg into a mixture, they're baking. Right? So that's kind of research we do. We're helping, we're preparing, we're everything. And our designers and PMs need to crack an egg, mm-hmm. and bake a research cake, right? And that changes the dynamic, and that changes how they perceive ownership and how we perceive the team dynamic, and how it all changes, and how the whole support and would-be isolation, mm-hmm. become teams work, because we are breaking boundaries of our own discipline.
And it's going remarkably well too. So that's a huge success story of something we wouldn't want to go back to the way things were, right? There are things that have to be done when scaling a design team, regardless of whether you're working remotely or not. and empowering teams and having them and operationalizing quality and usability and scaling research is an example of how we're optimizing how we work, right? One last thought on that while we're on that topic is often, and it's true at Mural too, when we're building the team, we're hiring generalists, we're hiring designers who can lead a human-centered process. At a certain point now for us, you need to start adding those specialist roles to help optimize operations, right? And so what Lada's describing is just hugely successful. We're adding motion designers, we're adding visual designers, and all of that is helping scale quality.
It's great to hear that. It's very, it makes me very hopeful, and that this new normal, or whatever you want to call it, is really going to be better in so many ways. We're going to have someday, hopefully not too far off, we'll have a mix of both in-person and remote practices that really are more powerful together than anything we've had in the past. That said, if you're listening at home and you're thinking about pitching a talk for Design at Scale 2022, I hope, I fully expect you to cite Betty Crocker in your citation. I mean, there's got to be someone who's going to pick up on that and who's listening, and we're going to see a Betty Crocker talk come June. One more thing, you mentioned a little earlier how you are all using tools like Loom, and in fact, you've kind of radically improved the way the Rosenfeld Media Conference program curation is going in terms of preparation of speakers. Those of you listening, you may not realize that when people speak at one of our conferences, they do 2 or 3 months of preparation in speaker cohorts with people like Lada and Kit, as well as a speaker coach helping them, and they help each other. They really work in cohorts. One of the difficult things is doing that in across time zones with groups 5, 6, 7 speakers. And as you can imagine, but Lada and Kit have been using Loom as a way for us to manage in a more asynchronous way rehearsals and commenting on rehearsals. Loom is a video tool that, among other things, helps people annotate directly to video. It's been fascinating. I bring it up as a last point because I'm wondering if any kind of focus on tooling is also something that's welcome to cover. The tools are changing very quickly. You work at a company that's a tooling company, obviously, so you're certainly in tune with this, but is that another aspect besides helping people connect and not be so lonely? Is it also about using tools in inventive new ways?
Definitely, right? Like this being forced to work remotely, it's forced us to think about all of those things and how to optimize efficiency. And take Mural for example. It's a visual collaboration tool, which is visual collaboration is essential for remote teams, but knowing how to use any tool isn't enough, right? So in our case, we need everyone in the product design org to be expert at facilitating the right methods at the right time for the right outcomes. So concrete examples on how you're using the tools and what new tools you're using, it would be super helpful.
Excellent. Well, lots to chew on here, lots to think about in terms of what we've learned in the last 2 years, lots to think about in terms of, not only the painful lessons, but the good things. They're all good things. They're all lessons that we're going to use in the years forward, and how they're going to be squared with some of the practices that we had pre-COVID when we could meet in person. I'm looking forward to taking this point to learn with you and the people who present, that you work with, that you select, to see what kind of, what is design going to look like, basically, in the coming years, and how it's going to change. And I think Design at Scale is going to be a great place, a great pivot point among many, I would imagine, where people are going to be coming together and figuring that out. So just a reminder, this conference is taking place June 8th through 10th. It will be virtual only. Maybe a year from now it might be different, but that's where we are in June of 2022. And you're hearing from Kit Unger and Lada Gorlenko, both at Mural, and two of our curation team, who are going to be reviewing all the proposals and putting them together in a program and then working with speakers directly. And after hearing from these two folks, if you don't think it's going to be something you want to do, I don't know. Because I'd love to work with the two of you and prep a talk, maybe one of these days. Anyway, thank you both. And those listening at home, we will make sure the link to the CFP is part of the podcast description. Thanks, Lada. Thanks, Kit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lou.
Super excited to see everybody's ideas.
So are we. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Rosenfeld Review, brought to you by Rosenfeld Media. If you like our show, please subscribe and review it on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast platform. I'd love it if you tell a friend to have a listen, and check out our website for over 100 podcasts with other interesting people. You'll find them all at rosenfeldreview.com.